Hey everyone, welcome back. I'm Alex, and I'm so excited to be back with you for another episode.
And I'm Emma.
And today we're tackling some tricky English expressions, specifically ones using the word off.
Yes, those little prepositions can really trip you up sometimes, right?
Absolutely, and we've got 10 common phrases that we're going to dive into today to help you sound more natural and confident in your English.
We'll break down each phrase with clear examples and even a few role plays to really bring them to life.
Sounds good. So are you ready to get started?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, awesome. So first up we have turn off. This one's pretty basic. It means to stop a device or a light.
Right, like, could you please turn off the light? I'm trying to sleep.
Perfect. Now let's imagine you're at the movies and the person behind you is talking really loudly on their phone.
Oh man, I hate when that happens.
It's so distracting, right? You could politely say, "Excuse me, would you mind turning off your phone? The movie's already started."
Yeah, that's a good way to handle it. Okay, so next we have take off. This one has a couple of different meanings.
The first one that comes to mind is removing clothing. Like, it's too hot in here, I'm going to take off my jacket.
Exactly. And the second meaning is about airplanes leaving the ground.
Like when the pilot says, "We are now ready for takeoff."
Right. Okay, so picture this. You're at the airport and you're running late for your flight. You get to the gate and you see that the plane is about to leave.
Oh no.
What do you do?
I'd probably yell, "Wait, don't take off without me." Hopefully they'd hear me.
Fingers crossed. Okay, moving on to go off. This one is all about sudden loud noises.
Like an alarm clock going off in the morning.
Ugh, the worst sound ever.
I know, right? But it can also be other things like a car alarm, a fire alarm, or even fireworks.
Oh yeah, like the fireworks went off at midnight.
Exactly. Now, let's say you're at a concert and all of a sudden the fire alarm starts going off.
Oh no.
Everyone would start panicking and rushing towards the exits.
That would be chaos. Okay, well hopefully that never happens. So our next phrase is call off, which means to cancel something.
Like if it's raining, you might have to call off a picnic.
Right, or if you're not feeling well, you might call off a meeting.
Okay, so let's say you're planning a big party, but then a storm hits.
Uh-oh. What do you do?
You'd have to call everyone and say, "I'm so sorry, but I have to call off the party because of the weather."
Bummer. Well, hopefully you can reschedule. Okay, next up is pay off. This one can mean to finish paying a debt.
Like, "I finally paid off my car loan."
Nice. But it can also mean that your hard work has led to success.
Like, all those hours of practice really paid off. I won the competition.
Exactly. Speaking of hard work, let's say you've been studying really hard for an English exam.
And you get your results back, and you pass with flying colors.
You could say, all that studying really paid off. I'm so happy.
That's awesome. Okay, our next phrase is put off, which means to postpone or delay something.
Yeah, like I need to put off that meeting until next week.
Right. Or I'm going to put off doing the laundry until tomorrow.
Classic procrastination, haha.
Now, let's imagine you have a doctor's appointment, but you suddenly get called into work.
Oh no, what a dilemma.
You'd have to call the doctor's office and say, "I'm so sorry, but I need to put off my appointment. Can I reschedule for another day?"
Hopefully they're understanding. Okay, next up we have drop off, which means to leave someone or something at a particular location.
Like, "I need to drop off this package at the post office."
Or, can you drop me off at the library on your way home?
Perfect. Now, let's say you're driving your friend home, but they've fallen asleep in the car.
Oh, that's kind of cute.
It is, but you don't want to wake them up. So you can quietly drop them off at their doorstep and leave a note saying, "Sweet dreams, I didn't want to wake you up."
That's so thoughtful. Okay, so next we had cut off, which can mean to interrupt someone while they're speaking.
Which can be quite rude, especially if you do it repeatedly.
Definitely. Like, I was trying to tell a story, but he kept cutting me off.
Not cool. But there are also times when it's necessary, like if someone is talking for too long and you need to move on to something else.
Right, like in a meeting, you might have to say, I'm sorry to cut you off, but we're running out of time.
Exactly. Now, the other meaning of cut off is to stop a supply of something.
Like, the water was cut off because of a burst pipe?
Or they cut off my internet because I forgot to pay the bill.
Oh no, that's the worst. Okay, next up is show off, which means to try to impress others.
Like he's always showing off his new car.
Or she's showing off her dance moves.
Sometimes showing off can be a bit annoying, but other times it can be harmless fun.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so imagine you've just learned a new magic trick.
You can show off your skills to your friends and family.
That's awesome. I love magic tricks. And finally, our last phrase for today is brush off. This one means to ignore or dismiss something.
Like I brushed off his rude comment.
Or she brushed off the doot from her clothes.
Okay, let's say someone gives you some constructive criticism, but you don't agree with them.
You could just brush it off and say, thanks for the feedback, but I'm happy with how it is.
That's one way to handle it.
Yeah.
All right, well, that was a whirlwind tour of 10 common English phrases using the word off. Hopefully you've learned a few new expressions today.
And remember, the best way to master these phrases is to practice using them in your everyday conversations.
So don't be shy, get out there and start using them. All right, so we covered 10 common phrases using off. Now let's take a closer look at some of their more nuanced meanings.
Yes, sometimes these phrases can be a bit tricky because they can have slightly different meanings depending on the context.
Exactly, like turn off. We talked about using it for devices, But it can also be used in a more figurative sense,
Absolutely. Think about something that makes you feel uncomfortable or annoyed.
like bad manners.
Exactly. You could say his bad manners really turn me off.
Oh, I see. So it's not just about switching something off, it's about a feeling of dislike or aversion.
Right. Now let's consider take off. We know it means to remove clothing or for a plane to depart.
But I've also heard it used to describe something becoming successful very quickly.
You're absolutely right. If a business or a trend suddenly becomes popular, we can say it took off.
Like her new business really took off after she appeared on that TV show.
Exactly. Okay, let's move on to go off. We talked about alarms and fireworks.
But it can also be used to describe someone losing their temper right.
Yes. If someone gets really angry, you could say, he went off on his boss.
Wow, that sounds intense. So go off can have a pretty strong emotional meaning.
It can. Now let's look at call off. We know it means to cancel, but it can also be used to stop someone from doing something, often in a protective way.
Interesting. Like if someone is about to do something dangerous.
Exactly. You might say, call off your dog, he's about to attack that squirrel.
Okay, so it's like giving a command to prevent something bad from happening.
Right. Now let's shift gears to payoff. We discussed its financial and achievement-related meanings.
But didn't you mention there's a slightly negative side to this phrase as well?
I did. Payoff can also be used in a negative context, like bribery.
Oh, right, like the politician was accused of paying off his opponents.
Exactly. So it's important to be aware of the different ways this phrase can be used.
Okay, moving on to put off. We all know it means to postpone.
But it can also describe a feeling of disgust or aversion.
Like the smell of that cheese really put me off.
Exactly. Now, how about drop off? Besides its meaning of leaving something or someone somewhere, it can also describe a decrease in something.
Oh, like there was a drop-off in sales last month.
Exactly. All right, let's look at cut off. We know it means to interrupt or stop a supply.
But you said it can also be used to describe someone being isolated or excluded.
That's right, like she felt cut off from her friends after moving to a new city.
So it's not just a physical separation, it's an emotional one too.
Exactly. Now, for something a little more lighthearted, show off. We know it means to try to impress others.
But it can also be used in a more playful or affectionate way, right?
It can, like my daughter loves to show off her new toys.
Oh, that's cute. And finally, brush off. We talked about ignoring or dismissing something.
But it can also describe being dismissive or unconcerned.
Or like, he brushed off my concerns about the project.
Right. So it can imply a lack of care or attention.
Wow, we've really gone deep into the nuances of these phrases.
We have. And that brings us to the end of this part.
All right, are you ready to put your off knowledge to the test? We've got a little quiz for you.
Oh, a quiz. I love quizzes. Let's do it.
Okay, great. So I'm going to give you a scenario, and you have to tell me which off phrase best describes the situation.
Sounds fun. I'm ready.
All right, first scenario. Imagine you're at a coffee shop trying to work, but the person next to you is talking very loudly on their phone. What off phrase would you use to describe how their behavior makes you feel?
I think I would say their loud talking is a turnoff because it's distracting and annoying.
That's exactly right. It's definitely a turnoff. Okay, next scenario. You've been training for a marathon for months, and you finally crossed the finish line. What off phrase best describes this feeling of accomplishment?
Oh, that's easy. All that hard work has finally paid off.
Yes, it definitely paid off. Okay, next one. You and your friends are planning a weekend trip to the beach, but then a hurricane hits. What off phrase would you use to describe what you have to do with your plans?
Ugh, a hurricane, that's terrible. We would have to call off the trip.
That's right. You would have to call it off for safety reasons. Okay, next scenario. You're driving home from work, and you see a hitchhiker on the side of the road, but you're not comfortable giving them a ride. What off phrase would you use to describe your actions?
I would say I'm going to brush off the hitchhiker's request for a ride.
Exactly. You're brushing off their request. Okay, last one. You're telling your friend a funny story, but they interrupt you before you can get to the punchline. What off phrase would you use to describe what they did?
Oh, they cut me off. That's so annoying. I hate when people do that.
Yes, they totally cut you off. So how do you think you did on the quiz?
I think I did pretty well. I got all of them right.
That's fantastic. It sounds like you've really mastered these off phrases.
I feel much more confident using them now, thanks to all those great examples and explanations.
That's what we like to hear. And remember, the best way to keep improving your English is to keep practicing.
Absolutely. Don't be afraid to use these phrases in your everyday conversations. The more you use them, the more natural they will become.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. We hope you enjoyed this episode and learned some useful new vocabulary.
And remember, language learning should be fun, so keep exploring, keep practicing, and keep having fun with it.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into the world of English.
Bye, everyone.